In 1980, you had the hip-hop scene being born on the streets of the Bronx. The New York City subway system was averaging about 38 crimes per day. 1980 was also when I learned about karma. Once you're on karma's radar, the bill always comes due. We rented from the man upstairs who happened to live with his son, and there were a couple of assholes, to be honest with you. You just didn't feel safe. It was just a really bad feeling. So the next thing that would happen would be something I would never forget as long as I live. He said something like, "Brace yourself, ma'am. You're not gonna like what I'm about to tell you." My mom turns the doorknob, swings the door open. What we saw and smelled, I couldn't possibly have mentally prepared myself for. And she's saying, "Oh my God, oh my God, oh my God." Growing up in Brooklyn, you see some really messed up shit. These stories have haunted me for over 50 years. Now it's time to tell them. My one rule, I don't name names. These are the Brooklyn Files, the real stories. In 1980, New York City had a split personality. You had the hip-hop scene being born on the streets of the Bronx, fueled by kids with nothing but a dream and a boombox, literally. Then right next door, in Manhattan, you had the yuppies in their fancy suits acting like they own the world. And it was a wild, gritty mess of haves and have-nots, all jammed into one city, packed in together. But it was also a city struggling with high crime and infrastructure decay. In 1980, the New York City subway system was averaging about 38 crimes per day. That era was defined by graffiti-covered subway cars, constant mechanical breakdowns, and this general overwhelming sense of lawlessness. Like, you just didn't feel safe, and it was just a really bad feeling. The most earth-shattering event of that year happened on December 8th, 1980, which of course was when John Lennon was shot and killed outside his home on the Upper West Side. Earlier that year, a citywide transit strike completely shut down the subway and bus system for 11 days, forcing millions of New Yorkers to walk, bike, roller skate, whatever, or even hitchhike to work. 1980 was also when I learned about karma and how it has a perfect memory. Once you're on karma's radar, the bill always comes due. I was 11 years old and we were living in the downstairs half of a single-family home that was illegally converted into a two-family home, which was an extremely common thing at the time in Brooklyn, to be honest with you. We rented from the man upstairs who happened to live with his son. The man was about 55 or so, the son was about 30. There wasn't a mother in the picture as far as I remember, just the father and the son. And there were a couple of assholes, to be honest with you, as we would soon learn. It first started with the son, who used to stomp on our heads. It almost seemed like he was doing it on purpose. It was constant. Thump, thump, thump was all you heard coming from upstairs, to the point where my mom nicknamed the son Elephant Balls. She was always saying that it sounded like an elephant lived upstairs, so I guess she thought Elephant Balls was a fitting name. So we just went with it and we just kept calling him that. One day, my mom, she went to the man upstairs, his name was Jerry, and she said, "Jerry, please ask your son to stop stomping on our heads. It's really unbearable, and it's pretty constant." And Jerry just flat out told my mom, he said, "Deal with it." Like, this guy just really didn't try to work with us at all. Pretty much from the very beginning till we left that apartment. So that was the first experience that made us realize what we were dealing with the people upstairs. The second experience was much worse than the first, but it wouldn't be the last one either, that's for sure. To say that the summer of 1980 was a hot one is an absolute understatement. That year, there was a brutal heat wave that gripped the city from June through September, with temperatures frequently going above 100 degrees. It was unbearable. Keep in mind, we didn't have an air conditioner downstairs in our apartment. We just couldn't afford it. So it was an especially brutal summer for us. All we had was a couple of fans that just blew the hot air around the apartment. It just made it worse. So it was really uncomfortable. My mom would tell us kids to take a cold shower so we can cool ourselves down, and that method would last maybe 20 minutes or so, but then you'd be hot all over again. So that wasn't an effective way to deal with the heat, of course. Despite this, my mom kept getting these high electric bills. Normally back in those days, our electric bill would be like 30, maybe 40 bucks on the high end. She started noticing that we would get these electric bills that were like 100 bucks, sometimes 120 bucks or more. You gotta understand, this was a real hardship for my mom because she was already on public assistance. And don't forget, this was 1980, so to get a $120 electric bill, it was unheard of, especially for an apartment our size. This was like 4 times what we should have been paying. My mom went to Jerry and she addressed this issue with him. And again, he wasn't very helpful or willing to help her figure it out. He just didn't care. He just acted like it wasn't his problem. He said something like, then maybe just use your electricity less, watch less TV, do less laundry, etc. So my mom was frustrated, to say the least, because we were broke. One day my mom decides to call Con Edison, which was the local electric company in Brooklyn, and she asked them if they could send down a technician to check out the electric meter to tell us if there was some kind of a problem with it. My mom was convinced that maybe the electric meter was misreading something or that there was a defect somewhere. So a few days later, they send down somebody to read the meter. The technician asked my mom to unplug everything in the house. We unplugged the refrigerator, the clocks, anything drawing power at that time. We shut all the lights. There was literally nothing running anywhere throughout the apartment. Then the electric company guy checks the meter, and the little dial on the meter was still moving very fast. And that's when the technician told my mom something. He said something like, "Brace yourself, ma'am. You're not gonna like what I'm about to tell you." The guy from the electric company is in our home and he's looking at the meter with all of our electric turned off, and he breaks the news to my mom. He says, "I think the guy upstairs is on your meter." My mother couldn't believe what she had just heard. She was livid. Here she's having a hard time even buying groceries. She's had to turn to the government to get assistance in paying her overly exorbitant power bill, and we're sweating like pigs every day in the 100-degree temps of the sweltering summer of 1980 without any AC. The guy upstairs is running his air conditioner 24/7 throughout the entire heat wave, and she goes and finds out that we're paying this guy's electric bill. Can you even imagine how enraged my mother was just to find this out? So she immediately calls him up, gives him a piece of her mind. My mother says something like, "I know what you're doing, Jerry. You're stealing electricity from me. How dare you?" And wouldn't you know it, instead of apologizing or playing dumb at least and saying that he'll fix the problem, he tells my mom, "You don't like it? Move out." My mom nearly hit the roof. She was exploding. She was so completely livid over the whole situation. I mean, who could blame her? So my mom didn't know what to do. She was completely beside herself. She felt overwhelmed, to say the least, over the fact that we didn't have the money to move out. It was just too expensive to do the whole process. Plus we had a lease, so we were pretty stuck, and we couldn't break that. So she didn't know who to turn to or where she can go. But this wasn't by far the last thing we would deal with in this apartment. So the next thing that would happen would be something I would never forget as long as I live. It was right around Christmas time. It was December of 1980. I was now 12 years old. We'd gone to Long Island to my aunt's house to spend the holiday for a few days, so we hadn't been home that whole time. So it was probably like December 28th or so, maybe a few days after Christmas, and I will never forget us coming home in the middle of the afternoon on a Saturday. We were still on Christmas break, and we'd just driven all the way from Long Island back to Brooklyn with my grandparents, who spent the holiday with us as well. And we had our Christmas presents in the trunk of my grandparents' car. We start unloading the presents. We walk up to the front door of our apartment, and the first thing we noticed was the windows were frosted over. It was weird because it was really cold outside, as it would be that time of year, but we could see some kind of a fog on the windows. So we didn't know what that was about. As we walked to the front door, we could see there was some kind of an ice puddle by the front door. Something seemed completely off. So my mom went to turn the doorknob as she puts the key in the door, but it was already unlocked. So she started saying something like, "Oh my God, the door's unlocked. What's going on? Did somebody come in?" My mom turns the doorknob, swings the door open, And what we saw and smelled, I couldn't possibly have mentally prepared myself for. The scream my mother let out was the most blood-curdling one that I'd ever heard from anyone ever. She suddenly starts screaming as loud as a human voice can possibly reach, and she's saying, "Oh my God, oh my God, oh my God." We're arriving home after a few days away for a Christmas visit at my family's house. The door swings open and this smell comes out of our apartment, and my mom is screaming as loud as a human voice can go. I'm traumatized at this point, and she's screaming, "Oh my God, oh my God." It was the most horrifying scream you could possibly imagine. We look inside the apartment and the entire ceiling from the living room is completely collapsed. We're talking like the entire ceiling all the way from the front door to about 25, 30 feet into the apartment, all the way across. We're talking about a piece of ceiling as big as the footprint of the entire half of the house. It's on the floor and you can see pipes exposed, and there's like 4 inches of water in the carpet. And you couldn't believe the rancid smell from the water sitting there on the floor for 4 days or so. The mold and mildew that was growing, we couldn't believe our eyes. It was the most shocking thing. My mother was screaming at the top of her lungs, "What the hell happened? Oh my God, what the hell happened?" And as an 11-year-old, I was completely traumatized by this whole thing. The screaming, the sight, the smell. This was our house, and everything was ruined and wet and smelly. It's a vision I'll never forget as long as I live, to be honest. We had no idea what had happened. We didn't even know where to start. It appeared that the pipe in the ceiling had burst. Water must have come pouring out. It must have caved in the ceiling when the water had collected from the weight, and then everything just came crashing down. After the initial shock subsided, my mother runs upstairs. She's screaming to the landlord. She's like, "Jerry, what happened?" My mom explained what she saw downstairs. He came running downstairs to see for himself. He acted like he never saw it though. Meanwhile, he probably forgot that he didn't lock the door when he left. Remember, we found the door unlocked when we opened the door, so somebody had been in there. So more than likely, he had come down, saw what happened, but he was playing dumb. I'm not sure why somebody wouldn't want to protect their home and their investment, but this guy couldn't care less. He said that he would take care of it and get it fixed, but he didn't seem to be in any kind of a rush. There was no urgency in his voice. In fact, he didn't seem to be bothered by any of it. It just didn't add up. So fast forward a couple of days, we get the initial mess cleaned up to some degree. We moved some of the big pieces of ceiling from our furniture. We had to go through everything and throw out a lot of stuff, coffee table, couch, etc. We did what we could to make the place livable. Meanwhile, the water was drying up, but not completely. So the smell was just getting worse by the day. As mold began to grow, you could smell it all throughout the house. It was that rancid mildew smell, a stench that you can't even describe, almost like a dead animal or something. We had to stop using that part of the apartment, so my mom would have to stay in her bedroom, we would stay in ours, and we were like prisoners in our house. About a month and a half goes by, and this guy still didn't get any of this fixed, like he's dragging his feet. So it got so bad that when I went back to school, even my teachers had heard about it. Like my mother had called the teacher to tell her that I'd be missing a couple of days of school because of that. Like the word got all around the school that our ceiling had collapsed. So kids are coming to me and asking me about it, and it was just this whole big deal. So it was kind of embarrassing because I didn't know anybody who had that happen to them except for me. Finally, I think about 6 weeks later, the landlord sends a contractor down to fix the ceiling and repair the pipe. This guy made us live downstairs in that apartment with that flood and never even rushed to get it fixed. We probably inhaled mold, maybe worse things than that. I remember at that time getting bouts of pneumonia. So God only knows what we were breathing in at the time. We had no understanding at the time either how dangerous that probably was by breathing in that mess. So not only was this guy upstairs actively robbing us by stealing our electricity, but he was making us sick by not fixing this problem right away. It was as if he was getting pleasure from our suffering. He just didn't care. Like I said, he was a terrible guy. My mother got so upset over the situation She felt so helpless, like how could we get out of this situation? So my mom didn't even have money for a lawyer. She couldn't take this guy to court or anything. My mom then calls my grandmother to get it off her chest, and I remember my grandmother always saying, "Jeannie, God will take care of him. You don't need to take him to court." You know, everybody talks about karma, but my grandmother talked about God. She didn't use the word karma, but everyone has their own beliefs. But my grandmother would say, "Leave it up to God and he'll take care of him." Well, let me tell you, I became a believer after this next thing took place. So the electric issue never got resolved. My mom just continued to pay this guy's electric bill, even though he was well aware of the fact that he was stealing from us. My mom just dealt with it, and she kept her mouth shut about it. But she knew that eventually it would come back to him, so I guess that's what gave her peace in this situation. So eventually our lease ran out, my mother found a new place for us to live, and we moved out. At that point, we just couldn't get out of this apartment fast enough, like we couldn't run fast enough. So we moved only a handful of blocks away, and even though we lived at a different place, we would pass by this old apartment when we were going to the park or visiting a friend on that street that we remained in contact with. Like we still had friends on that street. And one day, my brother and I were walking down the street. We had our baseball uniform on as we're heading to the ball field. It was springtime, it was nice outside, and Jerry was sitting up on the porch in a folding chair, taking in the nice weather. But he had a caregiver sitting with him, like somebody that looked like a nurse sitting in the chair next to him. And we turned our heads to look up at him and couldn't believe our eyes. He was sitting there on the porch. He had no legs. The guy had both of his legs amputated. We knew some kids on the block that knew him, so I guess we kind of found out what happened eventually. Apparently, he'd been driving down the highway one day, shortly after we moved out, and he fell asleep while he was driving. He flipped his car, he was tossed from the vehicle, and the car landed on his legs, severed both of them. So he had to have them both amputated. When we looked at his face, he simply looked miserable, like really unhappy. It was a beautiful day, but you could tell he couldn't even enjoy it. He just had this sour look on his face. But it was obvious why. You don't want to be the person throwing a party when somebody's life just went off the rails, and that's not what we're about. But you couldn't help but to see it, the way he treated us that year. There was no way we were the only ones that he was treating like that either. I'm sure there were lots of people in his life that he stepped on a regular basis to get ahead. Well, it all finally caught up to him. It's like he spent all that time planting thorns, and now he's the one getting scratched. It wasn't us celebrating, it was just the universe or God finally balancing the books. That sight stayed with me forever. I was only 12 years old, standing there in my baseball uniform, but I got it. I didn't need a textbook or a sermon to explain what I was looking at. Right then and there, I fully understood the way it all works, how it circles back and eventually finds your address. Seeing him with no legs, it didn't make me feel happy, but it made me realize that you can't go through life treating people like garbage and expect to get away with it forever. I took that lesson to heart and I carried it with me into the rest of my life. It taught me to be careful about what I put into the world, because sooner or later it all comes back to collect. And I want to make sure my tab is clear.